He was about to sign everything away when a voice stopped him. "Don't do it!" The room froze. Dozens of eyes turned at once. The pen hovered just above the paper. The lawyer frowned. "This is a private matter. Please step aside." But the boy didn't move. He was standing right there, just a few steps from the table, holding something tightly against his chest. The businessman looked at him, annoyed at first, then confused. Then something shifted. Because the boy wasn't looking scared. He was looking straight at him, like he knew him. "You're interrupting a legal signing," the lawyer insisted, stepping forward. "If you have no business here, you need to leave, now." But the boy didn't even look at him. His eyes were still locked on the man at the table. "You can't sign that," he said again, louder this time. A murmur spread across the room. The businessman slowly lowered the pen, but didn't let it go. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice tightening. The boy swallowed, then took one step closer. "If you sign that document, you lose everything." Silence, the kind that presses against your chest. The lawyer let out a short, irritated laugh. "This is absurd. Security." But the man raised his hand. No one moved, because something in the boy's voice didn't sound like a guess. It sounded like certainty. The room didn't breathe. Every eye was now on the boy. The businessman studied him more carefully this time. He was young, maybe 10, wearing simple clothes, slightly worn but clean, holding a thin envelope against his chest like it mattered more than anything else in that room. "This isn't a game," the lawyer snapped. "You're making a serious accusation." "I'm not guessing," the boy replied quietly. The man at the table leaned back slightly, narrowing his eyes. "Then explain," he said. "Because right now, you're seconds away from being removed." The boy hesitated, not out of fear, out of weight. Then he looked down at the document on the table and shook his head. "That paper isn't what you think it is." A ripple of discomfort passed through the executives around them. The lawyer's expression hardened. "This contract has been reviewed, verified, and approved by people who want him to sign it," the boy cut in. That landed hard. The businessman's grip tightened around the pen. "What do you mean?" he asked, more quietly now. The boy slowly lifted the envelope. "I mean, someone changed it." Silence again, but this time it felt different, heavier, because now there was a possibility, a very dangerous one. The lawyer stepped forward again, voice sharper. "This is getting out of control. Sir, I strongly advise we proceed immediately." But the man didn't move, didn't sign, didn't speak. Because for the first time since the meeting started, he wasn't sure anymore. "Changed it," the businessman repeated slowly. The word lingered in the air like something fragile, something that, once broken, couldn't be put back together. The boy nodded. "Yes." The lawyer let out a sharp breath through his nose. "This is ridiculous," he said, turning slightly toward the others. "We're allowing a child to derail a multi-million-dollar agreement based on—" "What?" "A feeling." "It's not a feeling," the boy replied. And this time his voice didn't shake. It steadied, like he had already crossed a line he couldn't come back from. The businessman leaned forward again. "Then show me." The room shifted. Subtly. But enough. Because now the decision had changed. This wasn't about removing the boy anymore. It was about proving him wrong, or worse, proving him right. The boy looked down at the envelope in his hands. His fingers tightened around it. For a second it seemed like he might hesitate again, but then he stepped forward, slowly, carefully, until he reached the edge of the table. The lawyer moved instinctively to block him. "I'm not going to allow—" "Step aside," the businessman said. Not loud, not aggressive, but final. The lawyer froze, then slowly stepped back. The boy placed the envelope on the table, right next to the contract. For a moment, no one touched it. No one spoke. It sat there, quiet, ordinary, and yet somehow heavier than everything else in the room. "What is it?" the man asked. The boy didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked around, at the faces, at the tension, at the people who suddenly seemed less confident than before. Then his eyes returned to the man. It's the original version. Shift. Small cat but violent. The lawyer's expression flickered, just for a fraction of a second. But it was enough. The businessman saw it, and something inside him. Locked. Open it, he said. The boy shook his head. You should. That landed differently, because now it wasn't just about truth, it was about ownership, responsibility, consequence. The man looked down at the envelope, then at the contract, then back at the boy. Where did you get this? He asked. The boy hesitated. And for the first time, there it was, a crack. Not fear, something deeper, something personal, but instead of answering, he said something else, something that didn't belong in that room. You weren't supposed to sign it today. Silence. Total. Because that wasn't information. That was knowledge. The lawyer stepped forward again, sharper now. This has gone far enough. Sir, this is clearly manipulation. Someone is using this boy. Who? The businessman asked. The question cut through everything. Clean, precise, and dangerous. The lawyer opened his mouth but no words came out, because suddenly the room wasn't on his side anymore. The man reached for the envelope, slowly, deliberately, every movement measured, as if the air itself had weight, and the moment his fingers touched it, the tension snapped tighter, because whatever was inside that envelope was about to change everything. The envelope felt heavier than it should. The businessman held it for a moment, without opening it, as if something inside him already knew. Sir, the lawyer said, stepping closer again, voice controlled but urgent, this is unnecessary. We are minutes away from finalizing an agreement that secures your position. The man didn't look at him, didn't answer. His eyes were still fixed on the envelope. You said this is the original, he said, almost to himself. The boy nodded. Yes. A pause. Then the one on the table isn't. That changed the air completely. The executives shifted in their seats, subtle but visible, because now the implication wasn't abstract anymore, it was direct. Someone in that room had altered a multi-million-dollar contract. And if that was true, this wasn't just a mistake, it was sabotage. The lawyer straightened his posture. This is speculation, he said firmly. We have verified every clause, every page. Then you won't mind if I check, the businessman interrupted. The tone had changed, no longer defensive, now controlled, dangerously controlled. The lawyer didn't answer immediately, and that hesitation was loud, too loud. The man noticed. Everyone did. Slowly, the businessman slid his finger under the edge of the envelope and opened it. The sound of paper shifting echoed through the silence. He pulled out the document, laid it flat on the table, side by side, with the one he was about to sign. At first glance, they looked identical. Same formatting, same structure, same signatures at the bottom. The lawyer exhaled, almost relieved. You see, he said. This is exactly what I've been trying to explain. Stop. One word, and the room obeyed. Because the man wasn't looking at the signatures. He was looking at the numbers, one clause, buried in the middle of the page, easy to miss, easy to ignore, unless you knew exactly where to look. His eyes moved slowly, back and forth between both documents, once, twice, 3 times. Then he leaned back, not in relief, in realization. This clause, he said quietly, pointing. No one spoke. This wasn't here before. The lawyer stepped closer, faster now. That's impossible. It redirects ownership, the man continued. Still calm, still quiet, but now unmistakable. If I sign this, I don't secure my company. He lifted his eyes and looked directly at the lawyer. I lose it. Silence. the kind that doesn't move, because now it was no longer a possibility. It was fact. The executives began whispering among themselves, low, urgent, uncomfortable. The lawyer's face tightened. "You're misinterpreting—" "No," the man said. And this time there was no calm, only certainty. "I'm understanding it perfectly." He pushed the altered contract away, just slightly, but enough to break its authority. Then he looked back at the boy. A different look now. Not annoyance, not confusion, recognition. "You knew this," he said. The boy didn't answer, but he didn't need to. The truth was already sitting on the table, between them, visible, irreversible. The businessman turned back to the room. Who changed it? No one spoke. No one moved, because now the threat wasn't financial, it was personal. Betrayal always is. The lawyer adjusted his tie, forcing a composed expression. "This is getting out of hand. We can review this calmly and—" "Who changed it?" the man repeated. Louder, sharper. The question cut deeper this time, and the silence that followed was no longer neutral. It was guilty. No one answered, not immediately. Because the question wasn't just dangerous, it was final. The businessman stood up slowly. The chair slid back with a sharp sound that echoed through the room. "Lock the doors," he said. Silence. Then movement. One of the assistants hesitated, then reached for the control panel near the wall. A soft click. And just like that, no one was leaving. The shift was instant. This wasn't a meeting anymore. It was an investigation. The lawyer's composure cracked just slightly. "This is completely unnecessary," he said quickly. "You're escalating a misunderstanding into—" "A misunderstanding doesn't rewrite contracts," the man cut in. His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't need to be, because now it carried authority, control, and something else, betrayal. He stepped around the table, slowly, looking at each person in the room, one by one, measuring, reading, waiting. "Someone in this room," he said, "tried to take my company without me noticing." No one moved. No one even dared to breathe too loudly. Because this wasn't speculation anymore. This was accusation. The lawyer stepped forward again, more forceful now. "You're making a serious mistake. If you continue like this, you could—" "Could what?" the man snapped. That broke it. The room flinched, because that was the first time his voice rose. "You want me to sign something that strips me of everything I built, and you're worried about my mistake?" The lawyer opened his mouth, closed it, adjusted his tie again, buying time. And in that time, everything shifted. The businessman turned back to the table, picked up the original document, then the altered one, held them both side by side, then he tore the altered contract in half. The sound was violent, final, irreversible. Gasps filled the room. The lawyer froze. "You just destroyed a legally binding—" "No," the man said, calm again, cold now. "I just stopped one." He let the torn pieces fall onto the table, like they didn't matter, like they never should have. And in that moment, everything changed, because there was no going back, no quiet resolution, no private discussion. This had crossed a line, publicly, irreversibly. The businessman turned again, but this time, not to the room, to the boy. "You didn't just guess," he said. It wasn't a question. It was a conclusion. "You knew exactly where to look." The boy stayed still, silent, but his eyes didn't move, didn't break, because now there was no hiding left. "Why?" the man asked, and this time there was something else in his voice. Not just control, not just anger, something deeper, something personal. The boy hesitated, just for a second, then said, "Because it happened before." That landed differently, heavier than anything else so far. The businessman's expression tightened. What do you mean? The boy swallowed. His grip on the empty envelope loosened slightly. They already tried once. Silence. Not confusion, not tension. Something sharper. Recognition. Because now, this wasn't about a contract anymore. It was about a pattern. The lawyer stepped forward again, more aggressively now. This is manipulation. Someone has coached this boy. This is clearly an attempt to disrupt. Enough! The word cut through everything, and this time, no one argued, because the man wasn't looking at the lawyer anymore. He was looking at the boy, fully now, focused, studying him in a way that went beyond the moment, beyond the room. You said this happened before, he said slowly. The boy nodded. Yes. When? A pause, the kind that stretches, that builds, that warns. The boy looked at him, straight into his eyes, and answered, the day you lost your shares. The room shifted again, but this time, violently, because that wasn't public information. That wasn't something a random kid would know. That was internal, confidential, buried. The businessman didn't move, didn't blink, didn't react, not externally. But inside, everything stopped. How do you know that? He asked. Quiet, dangerous. The boy didn't answer. Immediately. Because now, this wasn't just about the contract, or the company, or the betrayal. This was about something else, something that had been hidden longer than any document, longer than any deal, longer than any mistake. And whatever it was about to surface. The question hung in the air, heavy, sharp, unavoidable. How do you know that? The boy didn't look away, didn't hesitate this time, because whatever was about to come out had already been carried for too long. I saw it, he said. The businessman's eyes narrowed. That doesn't answer anything. The boy took a breath, slow, measured. Then, I saw it because I was there. Silence. Absolute. The kind that erases everything else, because that didn't make sense. It couldn't. The man stepped closer, one step, then another, until there was barely any distance left between them. That's not possible, he said quietly. That happened years ago. The boy nodded. I know. Another pause. Then, you just didn't see me. That shifted something. Not in the room. In him. A flicker. A fracture. Explain, the man demanded. But his voice had changed. Less control, more need. The boy looked down for a second, then back up. You came to the office that night, he said. You weren't supposed to. The building was almost empty. The businessman's face tightened, because he remembered, not clearly, not fully, but enough. There was a meeting, the boy continued, not in the main room, in the smaller one, near the back. The man didn't interrupt, didn't move, because now he was listening, really listening. You argued with them, the boy said, about the shares, about the numbers. You said something didn't match. A ripple of recognition passed through the man's expression, subtle but undeniable. They told you everything was correct, the boy went on, that you were overreacting, that you should trust the process. The lawyer shifted uncomfortably, but said nothing, because now he was listening too. They asked you to leave, the boy said, and you did. The man's jaw tightened. I remember that. The boy nodded again. But you came back. That stopped him, because that part he didn't remember. You forgot something, the boy said. Another pause. Then, or maybe you just felt something was wrong. The room held its breath. You came back quietly, the boy continued. You didn't turn on the lights. You didn't want them to know. The businessman's eyes drifted slightly, not looking at the boy anymore, looking through him, into something else, something buried. They were still there, the boy said. That hit. Hard. They weren't supposed to be, he added. The man's breathing changed, almost imperceptibly. They were talking, the boy went on, about the shares, About how it was done. The lawyer took a step back. Small, but visible. And you heard it, the boy said. The businessman closed his eyes for a fraction of a second. A flash. A fragment. A memory trying to surface. You heard enough to know that it wasn't a mistake. The man opened his eyes again, slowly. You're wrong, he said. But there was no strength behind it. Only resistance. I would remember that. The boy didn't argue, didn't push. He just said, you didn't stay. That landed, because it was true. Even without remembering, it felt true. You left before they finished talking, the boy said. You thought you understood enough. A pause. Then, but you didn't. Silence. Again. But this time, it wasn't empty. It was full of pieces trying to connect. You missed the part where they said, it wasn't just about the shares. The businessman's expression shifted again. What do you mean? The boy hesitated, just for a moment, because this was the line. Once crossed, nothing would ever be the same. Then he said it, quiet, clear, irreversible. They said there was a child. Everything stopped. The room, the air, the noise, all of it, gone. Because that wasn't business anymore. That wasn't money. That wasn't betrayal in a contract. That was something else entirely. The businessman didn't react immediately, didn't move, didn't speak, because his mind was trying to catch up, trying to reject it, trying to deny it. What child? He asked finally. The boy looked at him, and for the first time, there was something different in his eyes. Not just tension, not just certainty, something deeper, something personal. You didn't stay long enough to hear the rest, he said. Another pause, then. They said you'd never find out. The man's breath caught, just slightly. They said it was already taken care of. The silence that followed was no longer tension, it was impact, because now, this wasn't about what he lost. It was about what was taken from him without him even knowing. The businessman stared at the boy, long, hard, searching, trying to find something, anything, that made this make sense. And then, he saw it, not in the words, not in the story, in the face, in the eyes, in the way the boy was standing, like he belonged there, like he had always been there, like he had been waiting. You weren't just there, the man said slowly. The boy didn't move, didn't speak. You're connected to this. Another silence, then the smallest nod, and that was enough. The room no longer mattered. The people, the contracts, the tension, all of it faded into the background. Because now, there was only one thing left, the space between them. The businessman took a step closer, slow, careful, as if any sudden movement might break something fragile. You're saying, he began, then stopped, because the words didn't come easily, didn't want to be said. You're saying I had a child, and I didn't know. The boy didn't answer right away. He didn't need to. The silence already held the truth. The man's eyes searched his face, looking for doubt, for hesitation, for anything that could undo what had just been revealed. But there was nothing, only stillness, only certainty. How? The man asked. It wasn't anger, it wasn't accusation, it was something else, something closer to loss. The boy looked down briefly, then back up. They made sure you wouldn't, he said. The words were simple, but they carried weight. They said it would complicate everything, that it would ruin the deal. The businessman's jaw tightened. They decided that for me, he said. Not loud, but sharp. The boy nodded. Yes. Another pause. Longer this time. Because now the question wasn't what happened. It was what came next. The man ran a hand slowly over his face, processing, rebuilding, rewriting everything he thought he knew. Then, what about now? he asked. The boy blinked, just once. What about now? The man repeated, his voice steadier now, stronger. Why come here today? That mattered, because timing is never random. The boy hesitated, then answered, because you were about to lose everything. The man held his gaze. And that changes something? Yes. The answer came without delay. Why? Another pause, and this one felt different, more personal, more exposed. Because if you lost everything, the boy said slowly, you'd never look back. That hit, harder than anything before, because it wasn't about money, or contracts, or betrayal. It was about disappearance, about a life moving forward without ever knowing what it left behind. The businessman exhaled slowly, a long breath, as if something inside him had finally shifted. He looked around the room, at the people, at the silence, at the tension that no longer held power over him, then back at the boy. You came here to stop me, he said. The boy nodded. Yes. And to tell me the truth. Another nod. Yes. The man studied him, really studied him, not as a disruption, not as a problem, but as something else entirely, something that should have been there long ago. What's your name? He asked. The question was simple, but it carried everything. The boy hesitated, just for a moment, then answered, Lucas. The name settled between them, quiet, but powerful. The businessman repeated it, softly, Lucas. As if testing it, as if recognizing it. Then he did something unexpected. He stepped forward again, closed the distance completely, and reached out. Not to grab, not to control, just to be closer. Lucas didn't move, didn't step back, didn't look away, because whatever this was, it wasn't fragile anymore. It was real. The man lowered his hand slightly, not touching, not yet. Why didn't you come before? He asked. Lucas held his gaze. I tried. That stopped him. What do you mean? Lucas swallowed. Then, they didn't let me. The room shifted again, but this time, it didn't matter. Because now the conflict wasn't out there anymore. It was here, between what was lost and what could still be found. The businessman looked at him, at Lucas, and something inside him settled, not resolved, not fixed, but decided. We're not done here, he said, but he wasn't talking to the room. He was talking to the past, to the people who thought they could control it, to everything that had been hidden. Then he turned, just slightly, toward the others, and his voice changed again, cold, precise. This isn't over. No one moved, not after that, because whatever this meeting was supposed to be, it wasn't anymore. The contract was gone, the deal was broken, and the truth was no longer hidden. The businessman stood there for a moment, looking at everything, and nothing at the same time. Then he reached for his phone, not in panic, not in confusion, in control. Cancel everything, he said quietly. All pending agreements, all transfers, effective immediately. A pause, then, and find out who authorized this. He ended the call. No hesitation, no second thought, because now there was no uncertainty left, only direction. He turned back to Lucas. The room behind them blurred into something irrelevant. What happens next? He said slowly. We decide it. Lucas didn't answer, but he didn't need to, because for the first time he wasn't standing there alone. The man looked at him one more time, not as a stranger, not as a problem, but as something that should have never been hidden, and this time he didn't hesitate. Come with me, he said. Simple, direct, final. Lucas nodded, just once, and that was enough. They walked toward the exit, past the table, past the people, past everything that had just lost its power. The doors unlocked automatically, soft, quiet, as if the room itself understood. It no longer had control. And as they stepped outside, into something uncertain, but real, the silence behind them didn't feel empty. It felt exposed.